Hello, and welcome to my first ever live stream here on Twitch. So hopefully you guys can all hear me. If I could get a little thumbs up just to make sure that all the sound is coming through. I'll just wait to make sure. Perfect. So I've got a yes from Dev Lead there in the chat room. Thank you, Matthias. So what we're here to talk about this evening is a new feature that was added onto Chocolatey.org, and that is specifically around rate limiting. So what I'm showing here on the Chocolatey.org website is a little bit of information about what rate limiting is. So essentially what we're trying to do here is we're trying to ensure that Chocolatey.org is always accessible to everyone. So what we found is that some people use Chocolatey.org extensively to the point that they're actually making it harder for other people to use it. So we've already got an excessive use policy in place on Chocolatey.org. So this rate limiting feature is the ability to finer grain control around certain sections of the site to make sure that they're always accessible to everyone. So the first thing I want to talk about is what it actually looks like, and then a mechanism that you can use in order to actually cache those packages internally within your own environment or within your organization's environment to prevent this rate limiting feature from affecting your usage of Chocolatey. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to get Chocolatey on this machine. So this machine that I'm showing you in the background here, this is a completely brand new machine. It's a fresh install of Windows 10, Windows Server 2016. I'm going to put Chocolatey onto this machine. I'm going to start looking at the rate limit feature. So if I go into here and just type Chocolatey, obviously it's not installed, so we're going to need to get it installed. So I can just do that by going out to chocolatey.org, and I can grab the installation command, and let's just paste that into here, and let's get Chocolatey installed. Once that's installed, what I want to do is I want to trip the actual rate limiting feature. I want it to actually happen on my machine so I can show you guys what it actually looks like. So now that I've got Chocolatey installed here, I'm going to utilize a feature of actually the business version of Chocolatey, because it's probably the easiest way to actually trip this feature. So what I'm going to do here is in my newly created Chocolatey program data folder, I'm going to create a new one called license, and I'm going to borrow a license that I've already brought over for this exact purposes. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to install the Chocolatey extension, and that's done simply by doing a Chocolatey command to install a thing called chocolatey.extension. Now I'm going to cheat a little bit here because I have that package locally on this machine rather than reaching out to anywhere else to get it, which we would normally have to do if you were installing the license extension normally. So I'm just going to install that, and once I've got that installed, I'll be able to utilize the choco download command. So that's probably the easiest way to kind of force the rate limiting feature to happen. So there's two different levels of rate limiting. The first one is on the Chocolatey package itself. So if you attempt to install the Chocolatey package more than 5 times within a minute, you'll see that rate limiting feature kick in. And if you install any other packages more than 20 packages within a minute, you're then going to trip that feature as well. Okay, so let's just clear this out. And then confirm that I've got the business version installed. So I'm now running the business version of Chocolatey, so I now have access to that choco download command. So let's just go ahead and do it. So I'm going to do choco download and then Chocolatey. So what that's going to do is going to download that nutcake, that new package, and it's going to put it into this local folder. I'm just going to put this the force flag onto that command because I'm going to need that when I attempt to do it again. So first time it'll download that package without any problems because I haven't tripped any rate limits. If I do it again, same thing, exact same thing. It's going to pull down that nutcake and it's going to be available on my machine now. So that's 2. Run it a third time. It should successfully work. And then 4th time, 5th time should then work. And then on the 6th time, we should start seeing that rate limiting feature kick in. So that's the 5th one. And if I do it one more, then we should start seeing the error kicking. he says. Oh, that one maybe let me go through. Let's try one more. There we go. Okay, so that's the rate limiting kicking in now. So at 409 is the response header, response code that comes back from the request. 409 too many requests. So if I attempt that again, I'm going to see that again, because now I'm into a situation where I'm going to have to wait for an hour before it'll allow me to download that package again. And then if I go to chocolatey.org, if I go over here and I go to the actual packages page, I can see how it looks in a slightly different way. If I go to chocolate package here and click on the download link, move it back up, click on the download link, then we'll see a slightly different message coming up, but it's exactly the same thing. It's just giving us a little bit more information about what we can do or why this is happening. Okay, so the eagle-eyed amongst you might wonder, well, it's not going to be much of a demo now because you've just locked yourself out of chocolatey.org. You're not actually going to be able to do anything. And that's absolutely correct. However, I do have access to the chocolatey.org whitelisting. So I'm going to make use of that to whitelist my IP address on the firewall so that I can continue this demonstration without that problem being in play. So I'm just going to put this on this machine over here. I'm going to add a whitelist. Add that in. And with that added in, if I go back to the command line and I attempt the download of Chocolatey one more time, then it should succeed because I've whitelisted that IP address on the rate limiting system, and now I'm able to download it. And a message in the chat window from Pobby there. Yes, absolutely. Whitelisting it is possible to whitelist an IP address, so it won't fall under the rate limiting. But we only do that in exceptional circumstances. If you happen to trip it, or what we like to say is that the limits that we've currently set, you have to be doing things out of the ordinary in order to trip them in the first place. So here I've been hitting the download of Chocolatey. That's not something you would typically want to do or need to do. So that's why we have that exception in place when we need it, but it's something that will only be done on a very much on a per case-by-case basis. Okay. So, with that in play, what I now want to do is I want to look at what we can do in order to prevent this happening again. So, what I'm going to use is a system called Sonatype Nexus. Now, I'll go into exactly what it is in a minute, but what I want to do is I want to start the installation before I talk about it too much because it will take a second to install. So if I go up to here and do Nexus Repository and put the Y flag on, it will download this thing called Nexus Repository. So there's a question there. I just wanted to ask how much it is when you're going to use it as an organization. You're referring to how much Nexus is? I don't know the answer to that question. I know that there is an open source version, but you will need to clarify the licensing around that and whether it can be used for commercial purposes. I'm not a lawyer. I can't answer that question, but there is both an open source version of Nexus, which is what I'm using here, and a licensed version of Nexus. That's something you have to check on and go from there. What happens when you're using Choco Download for a package with a huge dependency chain, more than 20 dependencies? Does the limit kick in? Yes, it will. It's essentially the way that Choco Download works, or even a Choco install works. If there is a big dependency train, it actually downloads all the nutcags in order to start with before it actually does each of the individual installations. So if you've got a big dependency chain in there, then yes, it will trip that. That's something we are aware of. But again, there's only a few packages of such a big dependency chain that would cause any sort of problems. So, getting back to Nexus, what Nexus is a mechanism to have your own internal feeds. Now, that can be a feed, a NuGet feed, similar to what we've got on chocolatey.org. It can also be a feed for things like NPM packages, for I want to say gems, Ruby gems. There's lots of different things that you might want to have a feed for. It also does raw files. So if you want to have just a raw endpoint for downloading some assets, that's something that this Sonatype Nexus repository will do for you as well. So the way that I'm going to use it is I'm going to set up a feed that will allow me to do what's known as proxying of the chocolatey.org feed. So anytime I attempt an installation of a package that's not on my proxy feed, it will reach out to the feed that sits behind it, in my case chocolatey.org, and it will download it into that proxy feed. So then the next time I attempt the installation, it's not going to reach out to the internet anymore. It's going to use the packages that are on that feed. Now the other one I'm going to use is I'm also going to use what's known as a hosted NuGet feed. So that's one that will allow me to actually push my own packages for the sake of installations, and maybe again within my environment or within my organization. And then I'm going to have a final feed, which is actually a combination of the two. It's a group feed that allows me to say I want to take the proxy feed and the hosted feed and put them together, so that rather than having two distinct sources, I'm just going to have one, and I'm going to be able to pull packages from both of them as and when I need them. So hopefully, once this Nexus service is up and running, I'll be able to walk you through that process. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to go into the Nexus admin section, get those feeds added. And then what we'll also need to do is we'll also need them to add them into Chocolatey itself, so Chocolatey is aware of them. And then one of the last things we're going to do is we're actually going to remove the default source. So the default source is hitting chocolatey.org. Once all of this is set up and running, we're not actually going to need the default feed source anymore of chocolatey.org. We'll be able to remove it because all of the proxying that we're going to put into play is done for us within Nexus, so the actual end Chocolatey client isn't going to need it anymore. So while we're waiting for this installation to finish off, if there are any questions about anything I've talked about so far, I'm happy to take those. Otherwise we will just wait for this Nexus service to install, and then we'll continue from there. Okay, so I didn't see any questions come through there, and the Nexus service is ready to go. So what we're seeing here in the output from the installation is it's actually telling us the port number that the web portal is available on. So I'm just going to copy that. It's also telling us the default username and password. So obviously that's something you're going to want to change at some point, but for now, for the purposes of this, we'll just use that. So let's go here and get logged in. So up at the top here, we can go ahead and sign in with that username of admin and the password that was in the output. So one of the first things I'm going to enable here, let's go into settings, is down here there's this concept of realms. So by default, the feeds that are in my Nexus repository don't have this thing, which is the NuGet API key realm. So we're going to want that for the purposes of the second part of the demo. So I'm just going to do this while I remember about it. So I'm going to bring that NuGet API key realm over here. And what I'll then be able to do, if I go up to my profile up here, I'll then see what my API key is for this user. So I'm just going to put my username and password in there again. And now I've got this NuGet API key that I'm able to use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that into the Chocolatey configuration. There's a question in the chat room there about whether this video will be available to view back later. That's the intention. Yes, I am recording this as I'm streaming it, and if all the things line up and the demo it works the way I want it to, yes, you will be able to have a recording of this session, and I'll post that to my YouTube channel, which you should see down at the bottom here. If you subscribe there, you'll get a notification when that video is ready. So out of the box, if I run a Chocolatey command called chocolatey API key, it'll list out all of the available API keys that I've stored within my system. And what I'm going to do once I've got my source ready is I'm actually going to take that NuGet API key and add it in so that I can use that API key when I need to do the push. But what we don't have yet is we don't have the feed ready. So let's go ahead and duplicate this tab, and we'll take to the next stage. So we'll sign in here again. So out of the box, if we look over here and go to browse, what we'll see is that the Nexus repository comes with a number of feeds already configured. So the three that's actually of interest is this group of three down here, where we've got the NuGet group, and NuGet hosted, and then NuGet org.proxy. So this is the actual configuration that I spoke about that I'm going to set up, but they've set it up already for NuGet.org. So the exact same way that there is a proxy already set up for NuGet.org, we're going to set up the exact same thing for Chocolatey.org. So all we need to do, go into here, into settings, and into repositories. And let's go ahead and create a new one. So the types of repository are listed as NuGet, but it's essentially the same thing for Chocolatey. Chocolatey and NuGet work in the same way when it comes to the actual hosting of packages. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a proxied NuGet. So let's go ahead and call this Chocolatey and type Chocolatey proxy. And then the URL is going to be https chocolatey.org/API/v2. Okay, I'm going to leave all the other settings the same, and I'm just going to go ahead and create a repository. I'll do the same thing again for the NuGet hosted, and I'm just going to call this Chocolatey hosted, and I'm going to say create, and the final one I'm going to create is a NuGet group, which I'm just going to call Chocolatey group, and into that I'm going to add the proxied Chocolatey and the proxied and the Chocolatey hosted. So that one is simply the combination of those two other feeds that I've set up, and that's the one that I'm actually going to use when it comes to listing sources and finding packages that are available. Okay, so if I go ahead and copy that, and I go back over to here and run the choco source command, what we'll see is that I've actually got two sources configured at the minute. The first one is to Chocolatey, that https chocolatey.org, and the other one is the Chocolatey licensed. Now the Chocolatey license source came along when I installed the Chocolatey extension. Now, normally in the open source version of Chocolatey, you wouldn't have that second source, but it's not something that you would use normally. The packages that are on that feed are simply the licensed packages, and that's how we distribute the licensed packages as part of the Chocolatey license version. So what I actually want to do is I want to stop coughing is the first thing, but I don't seem to be able to do that. What I want to do is I want to delete that Chocolatey source. I don't want that source there for Chocolatey.org. So if I run the Chocolatey source help command, I'll see how I can go about doing that. So that's simply a Chocolatey source remove with the name. So if I do Chocolatey source remove and then with a name of Chocolatey, I'm actually going to remove that source. So if I run Chocolatey source again, now I've only got that Chocolatey licensed. So then what I want to do is I want to add a new source. So that new source is just up here again, Chocolatey source add with the name and then the source that I want to use, the URL that I want to use. So I'm going to do Chocolatey source add. I want to give it a name of, let's just call it local. It doesn't really matter, you can call it anything you want. And I want to give it the source of the NuGet group. That's not the right one. Let's go back while I have we've got that open. I clicked on the wrong one. So let's go back so that we can actually do this properly. It's actually this chocolatey group one up here that we want. So I'm going to grab this URL and copy that. So let's get rid of that. And paste. Okay. And then we'll do chocolate source one more time just to prove that we've got that. So we've now got a chocolate license and we've got a local. Okay. Now, out of the box, when Chocolatey works, it's going to enumerate and iterate over all the sources you've got available. So at the minute, we've really only got one that's of use to us, and that's this local one. Will it still list all? So I've got a question from the chat room. If you would use Chocolatey GUI, will it still list all of the packages from Chocolatey or only the locally cached packages? So the way that Chocolatey GUI works, so Chocolatey GUI, for the people that don't know, Chocolatey GUI is a WPF application that sits on top of Chocolatey itself. Chocolatey GUI uses the same sources configuration as Chocolatey itself. So if you add or remove a source from Chocolatey, then Chocolatey GUI will automatically have those available for all of the commands that it runs as part of it. Yes, that's a very good point, Manfred. Thank you very much. If you modify the sources out with Chocolatey GUI, then you would have to close Chocolatey GUI and bring it up. But Chocolatey GUI actually allows you to administer the sources that are available on the machine as well. But what it's doing is it's running the same Choco source commands that I showed you here. So the two are in sync, but if you have Chocolatey GUI open and you change the sources to Chocolatey, then yes, closing and opening Chocolatey GUI would be required. Okay, so to prove this out, if I go back to Choco download Chocolatey, and I'm going to use force, and for the sake of argument, I'm going to I'm going to go back to that source that I know that is currently broken. So I'm going to go to chocolatey.org. No, I whitelisted myself, didn't I? So it's currently still that command would work. But what I want to prove is that if I just do a Choco download, Chocolatey, I am still going to need that force command. So right now, if I go to browse my repositories over here, and I look at the Chocolatey group that I've got available, there's no packages currently in that feed. So if I go ahead and run the Choco download command for that Chocolatey package, what we should see is that it will it'll go to that group feed. It will check to see if the Chocolatey package exists on that feed, and when it can't find it, it'll then go to the upstream source, which is chocolatey.org, and it'll pull that packages down into my local Nexus repository. It'll then cache them there, ready for reusage, and then it will give it back to the Chocolatey client here to actually do the download. Now, the reason it's taking a little bit of time here is because actually the way that the Choco download command works is that it will actually, it actually ends up downloading all the Chocolatey package versions. So that's now worked, but if we go back and have a look at what was happening over here and we do a refresh, what we'll see is we've now got a Chocolatey package in this local feed. And if I expand this, I'll see that I've got all the Chocolatey package versions here. So that's just a little side effect of how the Choco download command works. But when you do a Choco install command, it will only actually pull down one of those versions. So now, if I go back and clear this again, I'm going to run that Choco download command again. So this time, it'll be super quick because it's downloading from that local feed. So I've done it once. And then I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it up to 5 times. Now, in the last time we did this, we would have eventually got the 429 error message coming back because we would be getting rate limited through Chocolatey. Now, you can sit and do this all day, and the rate limiting is never going to kick in. So the problem that we saw before, where we were downloading that Chocolatey package more than 5 times within a minute, it then caused us to have a rate limit that we would have had to wait an hour before we would have been able to do anything again. Now with this setup, I don't have that problem. All I've got to do, I can do this all day long, and I'm never going to see that rate limiting occurring because none of these requests are actually going out to chocolatey.org. They're all now internal within my environment or within my organization's environment. Okay? So that's essentially the way to kind of bypass is the wrong word, but if you are finding that you're being hit by the rate limit that we enforced on chocolatey.org, this is a very, very simple way to ensure that you are not going to get that to happen again, and you're going to have all of those packages internally ready for usage. Okay? So the second part of this setup that I wanted to show you was then using the other feed, the hosted feed, to host your own packages. And I want to show you how you can do that. Now, in order to show you how that's going to work, is I'm going to do an install of another package, and that's the one I'm going to use to show you how that works. So I'm going to install VS Code. So in the exact same way as it did with Chocolatey, that package doesn't exist on my local Nexus repository. So it's going to reach out to the internet and it's going to download from chocolatey.org. VS Code has a couple of dependencies. So in order for those dependencies to be satisfied, they also have to be downloaded into my local Nexus repository. So now that that's installing, if I go back to here and do a refresh again, we'll see that we've now got a couple of other things in our local Nexus repository, specifically the dependencies of that VS Code package. So it needs .NET 4.5.2 and it needs the Chocolatey Code extension in order to get installed. So with that in play, I'm going to close this and then open my PowerShell session again because I want the code shortcut to be available. And we can go into why that doesn't quite work in my setup just now later if you want. So I'm going to open up code into my ctemp folder, and I'm going to close the Internet Explorer page that it opened. And in my VS Code, I'm then going to install an extension. So I'm going to install, there's a Chocolatey extension for VS Code. I'm going to go ahead and get that installed because I'm going to use that as part of the demo of the next part as well. And I noticed there's a couple of questions in the chat, so let's just jump to those. The question is related to the Chocolatey GUI question that we had before, but will it list all packages that are available upstream in chocolatey.org or only the ones? To the best of my knowledge, no, it would only list the ones that are available in the local Nexus repository. If you wanted to, yeah, no, it's not going to list all of the packages from the upstream proxied source. It's only going to show you the ones that are available locally. So it's a good question. I believe that's the answer to that question. See, I don't know, man, if it will. I don't think it will list all of the upstream packages. It will only list the ones that are available. We could probably do a test at the end of this to see how that to see what that would show. Actually, let's just do that. If we just do a Choco list, see what that brings back. I expect that to only bring back the 4 or 5 packages that we have available. Interesting. That's certainly not all the packages, but it's more than I expected to see. Where have all of those come from? I'm not sure where those have come from. I should definitely look into what that is doing and figure out why that has occurred, because I wouldn't have expected all those packages to be downloaded so far. Install Chocolatey GUI, browse the group feed. Let's come back to that, Manfred. Remind me once I've done my last demo, and we'll come back to that part, and we can do that. Yeah, no, Matthias, I don't have any local packages cached on this machine, so we'll come back to that one. Yeah, the demo gods, Veronica, are being truly helpful to me tonight, so let's come back to that in a second. So in my VS Code, I've now installed the Chocolatey extension. So what I want to do is I want to, first of all, I want to go to that NuGet API key that I spoke about before. So if I go back to here and I take the NuGet API key that I set up for my hosted feed, I want to add that into Chocolatey so that Chocolatey is aware of that. So if I go to the API key command and I run help, I'll see that I'm able to add an API key with a source and a key value. So what I need to do is I need to do a Choco API key add, and then I'm going to need a source and I'm going to need a key. So the key is what I've got in my clipboard just now. And I'm going to go back to here, and I'm going to go back to my settings, and I'm going to go back to my repositories, and I'm going to go to that hosted feed, and I'm going to grab the URL for it. So let's take that, and I'm going to go back into my PowerShell, and I'm going to add that as the source here. And if I run the Choco API key again, I should see that I've now got that API key, and it's an authenticated feed ready for pushing packages to. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a Chocolatey package. So everything I'm going to show you through this VS Code extension, you can do from the command line. I just wanted to show you how you can do it in an alternative way. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new Chocolatey package here, and I'm going to be very imaginative, and I'm going to call it test package. So what that's going to do is that's going to scaffold us out a new Chocolatey package ready for creating. So I'm going to delete some of the templated files because I don't actually need them for the purposes of what I'm going to show you here. So I'm just going to delete everything but the Chocolatey install command, the Chocolatey install file rather. I'm going to delete everything but that, and then I'm going to go into the new spec file, and I'm going to modify the version because I need to, at least the new spec file needs a valid version number in order for the pack command to work. So I'm just going to add that, and into this one I'm just going to do the most basic of Chocolatey package, which is simply going to write out that things worked. Installation completed. So obviously you would normally want that to have far more in there, but for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm just going to, that's my Chocolatey package. So if I go back to here and I say Choco again, I've then got the pack command. So what this is doing is enumerating all the new spec files that are available in my current workspace. So I'm interested in packing the test package new spec, and I'm not interested in passing any additional arguments. So what I'm going to do there, what it's generated there is a new spec file, a nutcake file rather. And now that we have that, I can then do a Choco push. So what the Choco push command again is looking, it's finding all the the nutcake files that are in my workspace. So the test package one is one of those. I'm going to pick that, and then what this is then asking me is where do I want to push that to. So because I added that API key into Chocolatey, the Chocolatey VS Code extension here knows about that, and it's brought that out as a selection for pushing. So I'm going to pick that again. I'm going to say no additional arguments, and what that's going to do is going to take that nutcake and it's going to push it into my feed. So if I go back to here and I go back to browsing them, what we should see if I browse the hosted feed, the Chocolatey hosted, then in there I've got a single package ready for installation, but I can also browse that in an alternative way. If I go back to the Chocolatey group, I'll see it there as well, because this is the co-mingled version of both the ones that are available in my proxied feed and the one that's available in my hosted feed. So if I go back over to here and do a Choco install of that thing called test package, then again it'll reach out to that NuGet feed, it'll find it, and then it'll install it. So there's our output there from our installation completed, ready to go. So hopefully this has been helpful. So what we've essentially achieved here is the ability to take the fact that we are potentially getting rate limited by chocolatey.org and shown how within a 30-minute period we've been able to install a local Nexus repository, configure the Nexus repository to have a feed available to then proxy chocolatey.org, and then how we can also use Nexus to host our own internal packages as well ready for installation across those sources. So that's kind of it in terms of what I wanted to show you in terms of the rate limiting and how you can work around that. So I'm open to figure out what's going on with the aggregated feed and why we're getting additional packages in there. But let's do what Manfred was suggesting, and let's go ahead and install Chocolatey GUI just to see what happens when we bring that up. So for those of you who don't know it, again, Chocolatey GUI is a WPF package that works on top of Chocolatey itself, but it gives you a visual representation of what's available. So what we should have now is the Chocolatey GUI desktop app. So if we go ahead and bring that up, we will see what's available. So on this PC is listing the packages that we currently have installed. And then the local feed is my proxied feed that I set up. So in here, we have got a total of 191 packages. Or is that pages? So even that is confusing to me. Okay, so does that answer your question? Who was it that asked that question? That was MK Evanar, I'm going to go with. So is that the same as what we would get if it was chocolatey.org? Let's give it a test, shall we? So we go to settings and we set up another source. Let's just do it through the UI here. Let's go ahead and create another one. Let's put that Chocolatey feed back in. And then that source is going to be chocolatey.org/API/v2. Let's go ahead and save that. And if we go back to here, and we go back to Chocolatey, what does that give us? 191. Look at that. So that is so it is proxying all the feeds, but it surely can't have downloaded everything while we've been talking. So if we refresh this, that's not 191 packages, or rather, that's not 191 pages of packages. So I don't yet understand what the trigger is for actually downloading those. But let's see, there were some other comments here. Manfred saying, I haven't used Nexus before. If you need that, ProGet will work. So ProGet, that Manfred's mentioning there, ProGet is one of the alternatives. So there's a few systems that you can use for this. Nexus, Artifactory, ProGet. Those are the kind of the main ones. I just picked Nexus because I knew that there was a Chocolatey package readily available that would install it without too much hassle. So that's why I went for it. There's a comment there I don't quite understand regarding improving packages. Was that further up? Did I miss something? I'm guessing perhaps Nexus passes the query along to chocolatey.org and downloads whatever packages Chocolatey returns. Wouldn't expect that though. No, I wouldn't expect it either, Kim. So, nothing malicious. So yeah, I don't think that answers the question necessarily, but there must be something that triggers the local caching of those packages. What would be interesting to see is at what point that happens. If anyone's got a suggestion as to what a command that we want to run to narrow that down, I'm all ears. It seems that it downloads all the packages listed. Will it not just hit the rate limit really fast? So that's an interesting point. So there is the potential, yes, that the act of caching the packages might actually cause the rate limit to kick in. Absolutely. So that's why I said with the Choco download command, where it was actually downloading all the package version of Chocolatey, that in itself would cause the rate limit to kick in. But if we go and install something else, for example, let's go back to our here. I want to disable that source again so it doesn't cause any problems. So let's go back to sources here and let's just delete that one more time so that it's not there. We'll close out Chocolatey GUI and just to check, chocolate source. It's just got that one. So if we do choco install fiddler as an example. So when we did the choco download Chocolatey, it downloaded all the Chocolatey package versions. When we install fiddler, it's only going to get us the most recent version and any dependencies that fiddler has. So if we go back into here and we refresh again and we look at fiddler, then it's done exactly what I said it wasn't going to do. Searching repo doesn't download package. No, I don't think it does. So why is it? Is it preemptively doing that? Is that a setting? I don't want it to do that because that would cause the rate limit to kick in. Let's try a more specific command. Choco. Let's find a package version number. Let's go back to here. And let's do a search for winderstat. So there's a package version there. Let's not take the most recent one. Let's take an older one. 112. Copy. So choco install winderstat version 112. What does that do? Oh, it didn't actually do it yet. There's a problem with the actual install script on that older version, but that's not really a problem for what we're trying to show here. If we go back to winderstat, then it's only got that single version. So I wonder if the act of doing the install is actually returning all the available package versions, and then Chocolatey is then doing a specific command after that initial call to then do the install of the known latest package version. Now we could test that, but I don't really want to in case it doesn't work. Interesting. There's been a link posted into the chat window here, so let's see what Kim has turned up and we can talk about it. Unique gallery. Was there something specific on this page you wanted to look at, Kim? Or a quick read? Look at the bottom. By default, searches in NuGet repositories in the repository manager are passed through to the remote repositories, and the search results are merged with internal search results and included in an internally managed index. This merging has to make some assumptions to generate component counts. Interesting. The thing that's not clear from that is whether that managed index is actually all of the packages, or whether it's just a fake result that would then go and fetch the actual package when it needs it. So, to test this, can anyone think of, I'm thinking of you, Kim, here. Can you think of a package that's got lots of package versions? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove my whitelist that I put in for my IP address from Cloudflare. So if I go over to here and search again for my IP address, and I'm going to go ahead and remove that whitelist. So I am no longer whitelisted. So if I start hitting the rate limit, I should start seeing errors occurring here. So right now, if I do Choco install of something, Adobe Reader, that should work because, did I spell that wrong? I did. 2 hearts. Who would believe it? If I do an install of Adobe Reader, that should work, and I shouldn't hit any sort of rate limit. And behind the scenes, if it's went and downloaded all of those Adobe Reader package versions, then I would imagine I would have hit the rate limit. So after this command has executed, I'll do one more install, and if it has downloaded all of those packages, I should be rate limited, right? I think in my head this makes sense. So let's do cake.portable will be another one. Yeah. So I'm reading through the suggestions of packages to install. We'll do one more test after this, once this is finished. And if it works, it means in my head that it hasn't actually downloaded all those packages into the local Nexus repository. It's only added the entries into the cached index to then know that those packages are available, and it would then subsequently go and download them when it actually needed it. So let's let that finish, and I'm going to go ahead and install Cake as the suggestion from the chat room there. So I think that's a good idea. For anyone that doesn't know, as well as doing Chocolatey as my day job, I contribute to another open source project called Cake. And what I like to say is that it's a nice mixture of chocolatey cake, is I also like to eat that. So, and I've also been told that I only seem to contribute to open source projects that are food related. So I think there's definitely a little bit of truth to that. So let's let that finish, and then let's do choco install cake.portable. So if this is not rate limited, then this tells me that it's just a entry into the index rather than actually downloading them, because we would have hit the rate limit. So yes, at this point, if we go back to here and we do a refresh, then cake.portable has got lots and lots of package versions there, but I haven't been rate limited yet. So I think that's what it's doing. It would be good to get a definitive answer on that, but let's do one more. There's another suggestion of WinRAR. It'll have lots of versions. So again, that Choco install WinRAR has been allowed to happen and get installed. And then in the local cache proxy feed, if we go back to WinRAR, again, lots of versions there that would have tripped the rate limiting. So I think that's exactly what it's doing. No, Matthias, let's not go there. So there was another question from MK Evanar. Are you able to open the folders to see if there are new spec files? That's a good question. So the nutcake is there. That's for the Java runtime. That's not for the one that we've just done. So, but I wonder whether that's a fake entry as well, because that nutcake is there. So can I go to this in the file system? Tell me where it is. So that would be the other thing to look at. Let's do that as well as one final test. If we go back to the repository here, and then we look at the proxied version, then it should hopefully tell us where on the local file system those nutcakes are being stored. So where can I find that? See, there's an obvious place. Let's see. Program files. No, it would be most likely here, wouldn't it? Selena type. Nope. I expect it to. No. Nexus, where do you live? You live here. C program data Nexus public. No. No. Not entirely clear what you're referring to, Manfred. You could get the definitive answer if you threw out the connector to chocolatey.org and then install an older version of Cake. Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. So the question is, would it though? I don't know. Let's answer my question that I've got, and where it's the Nexus repository, where stored local packages. This is does Nexus store packages? You guessed. It's come up twice. I'll have a quick look at that one. No, nothing else is there. Does anyone happen to know? I didn't see that one. Program data Sonatype work. There is a Sonatype work folder. Nexus 3. Oh, look at that. Okay, well found. Instances? Blobs. Defaults. It wouldn't have renamed them all into lots of things, would it? So look at some of these. No. Not seeing anything obvious in here. Oh, I see what you're referring to. Okay, so short answer is I don't know. I would have expected that the rate limit would have been hit if it actually downloaded all those nutcakes. So I don't necessarily want to keep you around while I'm trying to figure that out. So I think that covers everything I did want to show in terms of working around the rate limiting feature that was added to chocolatey.org for specifically this reason. What I would like, there's obviously some outstanding questions about Nexus itself and how it's functioning. I think that's something we could maybe cover in a later stream. But hopefully, like I say, this was useful to you. If it was, I would love to hear that was the case. If it wasn't, I would also like to hear why it wasn't and what can be done to improve that and make things better in the future. My idea is that I'm going to try and do this as a regular weekly stream. The topics are obviously up for debate, but if you are interested, you can go out to github.com, and if I can spell my username correctly, then I do have a GitHub repository on here specifically for ideas for the live streams that I'm going to be working on. So if I bring that up, so there's a live streams repository here, and my idea is for an issue per topic. So if you have any suggestions about what can be covered in these streams, feel free to raise an issue in this repository, and I'll tackle that as and when I can, and whether I think I can kind of condense the content into a manageable stream like this. One of the questions that was in this chat earlier was whether this was going to be recorded. So this has been recorded, and if everything works the way I want it to, it will be, can't really point, it will be on that YouTube feed that you can see in the bottom of the window there. I'll publish that there once I've figured out that everything's working. But with that, I'm going to say goodbye. Like I say, hopefully this was useful. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions, and I will say goodnight. Thank you very much.